Hello, everybody. My name is Mac. I'm the marketing team at the Polyvagal Institute, and we're just going to go through a brief opening before I introduce Arielle. Hello and welcome to the Polyvagal Institute. We're excited to welcome you to our community and are so happy that you joined us for today's author talk with Arielle Schwartz. Arielle is here discussing her newest publication, the Polyvagal Theory Workbook for Trauma. As I said, I'm Mac Paulus. I'm on the marketing team at PVI. Also online with us today are Susie Cavassa, PVI Chief Operating Officer, and Caroline Vasquez, Senior Director of Strategic Communication and Development. And we're all here to support your online experience during this session. And just a little bit about PVI for those of you who are new to us. I'll share just a little bit more about the organization. We're an international nonprofit based in the US with a mission of creating a safe and connected world through the principles of polyvagal theory. We provide education, training, and resources to a global audience of learners. And if you haven't already, we invite you to visit us online at polyvagal.org. And just lastly, before I introduce Arielle, I'll go over a few housekeeping items. This event is being recorded, so we'll be sending out the replay, the recording within 48 hours. As for cameras on, we invite you to turn your cameras on if you feel comfortable doing so. However, we do ask that you keep your microphone muted throughout the event, unless asked specifically to unmute so that all attendees can hear the presentation. And closed captioning is available via Zoom. You can turn on captions using the settings at the bottom of your screen. And for questions, Dr. Schwartz is going to be speaking for about 45 minutes. She's going to take questions at the end of the time as time allows. So please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit your questions. While we may not be able to get to every question, we'll do our best to lift up those that resonate with the group or reflect common themes. And now just a little bit more about Arielle. Dr. Schwartz is a renowned speaker, author, esteemed clinical psychologist, and PVI course partner. She has been widely recognized for her research and clinical advancements in trauma treatment, which have shaped the landscape of trauma recovery and elevated the standard of care across all therapeutic settings. Today, she joins us to share insights from her latest work, the Polyvagal Theory Workbook for Trauma. Please join us in welcoming Arielle. Here you are.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that really touching introduction. I am going to move myself into gallery view so I can see you all. And hi, hi. Thank you for your waves. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Pauline. Hi, Mary. So good to be with you. Familiar faces, some new faces, and I absolutely love being with our polyvagal family, often referring to us in that way because pretty quickly when we enter into community surrounding the polyvagal theory, there is just warmth and connection that is so palpable. I feel it in my body and I can feel that connection really around the world. Speaking of, hey, Michelle, hi. Um, Familiar faces. Speaking of around the world, go ahead and share in the chat. Where are you coming in from? Let's see what our community comprised of here. All right, we've got Bolivia and here in the US and Ireland, Dubai. Wow, good evening in Dubai. Amazing. Canada, all over the US, many states here. North Wales, we've got UK and Rome, Italy, Moab, Utah. Awesome. And quite a few of you in Michigan or UK. Zimbabwe. Wow. Hello. Welcome from Zimbabwe. This is just such a fun kind of part of the routine here is just feeling where we're tapping in like this kind of big polyvagal uniting force around the world. Amazing, amazing. Istanbul, Turkey. Hello. Norway, but in Poland now, from Norway. So multicultural right there. Finland, Denmark, France. I love Vashon Island, Washington, by the way. Oh my gosh, what a gorgeous spot. And Olympic Peninsula, gorgeous. Vancouver, the Netherlands, Berkeley, California, Louisville, Colorado, down the street. Hello. And Boulder, really down the street. Okay, fantastic. So good to be with you. Serbia as well. Phenomenal. So here we are. Here we are, just tuning into a little bit of time together. I'm going to share with you today kind of and I'm going to pull up a slide for just a moment. I'm going to share with you today about the new book, the Polyvagal Theory for Workbook for Trauma, and the body-based activities to regulate, rebalance, and rewire your nervous system without reliving the trauma. This book came out in April of this year. I am deeply grateful to the Polyvagal Institute, both for in a sense, kind of being the foundation for this book. I was sharing that I teach for the flagship program here, the certificate program, and the lecture that I do for that really forms much of the basis of this book. So for any of you that have done the flagship program, you've had a kind of experiential flavor of what's in this book. And now just imagine an accordion stretching that information out and allowing you to kind of take it in piece by piece. At the end of today, we'll be sharing with you a coupon code for that book, and we'll be putting that into the chat, and we can even add that into the chat now for you as well. That can be used at the New Harbinger website. So my intention is to tell you a little bit more about why I wrote this book, what is in the book, who it's for. I'll do a few readings from it. We will do a little bit of an experiential, and then we are going to take some time for your questions and maybe your comments if you've already been working with the book and how it's landing for you. So I think I want to start out just by sharing with you the motivation for writing this book. So um, my hope was to create a very accessible, easy to understand application of the polyvagal theory for both a layperson to use in their own trauma recovery, especially as a resource between sessions. But also, this is written for therapists as a tool to use with clients. So it's kind of crossing that bridge as some of my other workbooks also do. And the emphasis of this book is to bring my background as a somatic psychologist. I've been in somatics since 1996. So goodness gracious, I'm going to say that's almost 30 years. Whoa, I feel a little old, but that's okay. um, and so this book brings in body-centered tools and kind of merges together what I think can often be a very conceptual layer of the polyvagal theory and helps ground it in the felt sense. The emphasis here, once again, is on regulating and rebalancing and rewiring the nervous system without reliving the trauma. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. And the goal is to create an interactive experience. So when I was writing the book, I wanted it to feel like at some point you could simply be guided through a practice. So throughout the book, there are URLs that essentially link the book to the website on the New Harbinger publication page. And then there's my voice guiding you through the practice. The book also has a corresponding video course, and I will share with you a little bit more about that as we go as well. And I'll also just put a link to that video course here in the chat. And the video course accompanies the book, basically kind of modeled chapter by chapter. And then once again, this time allowing you to be guided through through the practices, this time via video. So those are some of the kind of resources that accompany the book itself. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of a reading here right from the introduction of the book on an area that basically kind of explains a little bit more about the intention. So, the treatment for trauma typically involves reviewing and reflecting on memories of traumatic events. Such interventions for trauma recovery focus on the stories of your losses while attending to the mental and emotional repercussions. And I'll just say, all of that has its value and validity. Unfortunately, however, those traditional approaches are often triggering and can lead you to feel re-traumatized. They also assume that the traumatic events are over. However, in our modern world, we are often navigating the ongoing exposure to threats that we see in our daily lives or in the media. And I suppose that's always true in the world, but boy, does it feel true right now, doesn't it? Therefore, this workbook is designed to help you attend to your symptoms without reliving or over-focusing on your pain. Rather than focusing on the stories of your past, you will learn the tools to help you with the physiological effects of traumatic stress through the applied science of polyvagal theory, also known as the science of safety. In these pages, you will discover interventions that you can integrate into your life on a daily basis that will help you connect to yourself with greater ease and self-compassion. You will discover gentle breathing, movement, and body awareness practices that will help you attend to discomfort without feeling overwhelmed. So, just taking that in for a moment of kind of knowing that we can attend to the impact of trauma, the symptoms, the impact that this has on our nervous system, and begin to create more of a felt sense of okayness or present moment orientation to connection, perhaps even a present moment sense of it's safe enough for me right now. And that when we spend the time attending to our nervous systems and building that reservoir of resource and connectivity, then perhaps when we look at the news or are facing the ongoing events or are attending to the past, we can do so with this really robust connection to nourishment at the level of the nervous system. One of my favorite quotes, and this one comes from Deb Dana, of course, our colleague in this work, is this concept of story follows state, that the mind narrates what the nervous system knows. And if we are going in to attend to trauma, but all our nervous system knows are states of anxiety, panic, high sympathetic activation, that's going to, in some way or another, kind of shape or color how we attend to the trauma of the past. It sometimes is harder to differentiate from it, or essentially, maybe a basic way of saying this is we need to feel safe enough now to release the impact of trauma. And if we don't know how to access that here, now, present sense of safety, when we attend to those events, it's harder to let something go. It's harder to find a sense of release or relief. And likewise, kind of using some of the framing of our applied polyvagal theory, the same thing can be true if we're kind of mired in states of hopelessness or despair or apathy. What's the point? Nothing's going to make a difference. And if we're stuck in more of a dorsal vagal collapse or shutdown, that might be a more likely narrative that dominates the sense of, well, why would I attend to that wound of the past? What difference is it going to make anyway? So instead, we come back to how do we cultivate a felt sense of safe enough? Yeah. Thank you, Caroline, for putting that link to the book and the coupon code in in our chat. That coupon code is welcome25. There you go. So I'll share another quote from the book. This again comes from the introduction. You are not only biologically wired to respond to threats, you are also endowed with an intrinsic capacity to recover from traumatic stress. Polyvagal theory provides you with a roadmap to resilience, allowing you to reclaim your health and vitality. The tools offered in this book do not erase the traumatic events that happened to you. However, you can recover from the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. Resilience helps you feel capable of working through the pain of the past while feeling empowered in the present and hopeful about your future. Rather than isolating yourself or withdrawing from life, you can tap into resilience to engage wholeheartedly with the world, while trusting in your capacity to respond to difficulty when it arises. One thing that I'll offer here, and it's a little bit about kind of my broader why. Like, why did I align myself so closely with the polyvagal theory? And there's a few reasons why. One goes all the way back to when I first met Dr. Porges, which was in 2012. And I was attending a 6-hour program with him, and it was the first time that I ever heard someone say, if we didn't have our sympathetic nervous system, we wouldn't have play. And it was such a light bulb moment for me, because everything that I had been reading about and writing about up until that point basically made the sympathetic nervous system the bad guy in the story. Our fight-flight response was the only association that I had at that point with the sympathetic nervous system. But the polyvagal theory teaches us that we can actually link that state of safety, the ventral vagal circuit that helps us connect to each other and connect to cues of safety that downregulate just enough so that when we connect to the sympathetic nervous system in the context of safety, we can feel joy and excitement and empowerment. How cool is that? So that weaves its way truly into everything that I do. And there's a whole chapter on that in this book as well, about kind of mindful mobilization for the purpose of feeling that felt sense of empowerment now. And sometimes I'll kind of put it this way, that we can see that the sympathetic nervous system and our threat response get kind of overcoupled. And anytime we feel that elevation of heart rate, we think something bad is going to happen. And so to uncouple that, we actually need an orientation towards play, and we need an orientation towards enough connection and enough support or enough sense of safety to access that positive state of the sympathetic. But the other reason that I really love the polyvagal theory is this. When I've been studying for some years now about the kind of different theories that are out there about vagal regulation, or the way that our vagus nerve helps regulate our brain and our body and our heart rate and our respiratory rate and our digestion and our sleep, all of these great things, most of the theories out there are what I refer to as closed circuit theories. They're basically an internal system that says how you breathe and how you sync your breath up with your heart rate regulates the brainstem, which regulates the body. And that's all true. But unlike some of the other theories out there about the vagus nerve, the polyvagal theory has a very significant difference. It's an open circuit system that recognizes that social engagement and social experiences and the world around us has a very strong impact on our internal experience of ourselves. Our nervous systems are highly responsive to each other, to our environment, to the world. And on the one hand, this is this can be challenging because in polyvagal theory, we talk about something called neuroception. Neuroception basically means that our nervous systems can pick up on cues of threat without our even consciously being aware of it, and basically take our bodies into a bit of a threat response. And The other side of this story is that because of the social engagement system, our nervous systems can also receive and respond to cues of safety that we pick up on within each other, within our the kind of cues of safety that we offer to each other through our voice tone, through our facial expressions, through our body language. And we receive that in our ears, and we express through our voice, and we receive through our eyes. So this acknowledgement that we are capable of co-regulation, which none of the other vagal theories really account for. So that said, I'll tell you a little bit more about the organization of this book. Chapter 1 covers the science of safety and the basics of polyvagal theory, kind of helping you get comfortable with the language and, not getting overly mired down into the science of it all, but kind of making it again as accessible as possible. And whether you're a therapist working with clients and you're working through the workbook together, you can actually use some of those terms like sympathetic or ventral vagal or dorsal in ways that feel kind of like, okay, we've got a language, a shared language in the room, neuroception and so forth. We'll talk about the tiered response to threat and so on. Chapter 2 is called The Gift of Connection. It focuses on co-regulation, especially as it originally occurs within our attachment relationships, looking at the origins of the development of the vagus nerve as that even begins in utero and into the first year of life. And then speaks about how we heal, given that many of the people that might be reading this book, a book on trauma, maybe didn't get that optimal attachment relationship. Maybe the people that we're working with didn't get that, right? And so how do we attend to the impact of early attachment and the way that it shapes our vagal regulation and how we heal, knowing that co-regulation is a big part of that journey and that co-regulation provides the basis for that self-regulation, that capacity ultimately to sustain more self-compassion. So that chapter kind of brings us into self-compassion. Co-regulation less is basically saying that when one person is in that sense of safety, connection, calmness, inner peace, capacity for compassion, that we can basically offer that to another, nervous system to nervous system, of course, also language systems being part of that. And if we kind of go another level, kind of nervous system to nervous system with that, when we're in a kind of regulated vagal tone, when our nervous system in that ventral vagal system is very highly regulated, we are basically offering that regulation to another in the same way that perhaps a parent might offer that to a child. The soothing, the rocking, the holding, and even heartbeat to heartbeat. There's actually qualities in which non-verbally we're basically offering those cues of safety that allow the other person to receive that and perhaps to begin to kind of attune or kind of join in a sense or entrain the nervous system to that state of regulation. Thank you for your question in there. It just popped up in a way that I could see it. And in terms of the self-compassion practices within this chapter, the way that I offer it is not just compassion as a concept, because I think sometimes we get the idea that self-compassion is the way that we're talking to ourselves or thinking about ourselves, which is part of it. But there's another layer of how do we embody self-compassion. So I'll share a very brief image here from the book going into this would be from chapter 1, kind of getting to know your nervous system. And then a little bit, this would be from a little bit later when we go into movement and play, right? And then here, some embodied self-compassion practices. And as you might notice here, that this invites you to actually be guided with an audio track so that you can use the book, but also have my voice guiding you through each of the practices. And this is just a few of them. There's more beyond this. Chapter 3 is called Rewiring Your Brain for Resilience. It focuses on natural vagus nerve stimulation to enhance vagal tone. And it will define all of those terms for you as well, again, if this is new. But basically, if we want to look at what is vagal tone, it is the ability to move between the sympathetic nervous system, which is that kind of mobilizing, activating system, back into the parasympathetic system, the rest and kind of immobilizing, or back into stillness. And when we look at that from a kind of scientific process, what we're looking at is heart rate variability, or that with every breath we have an increase in heartbeats, and every exhale and a decrease in heartbeats. Every inhale we get more, and every exhale we get less. Les, we can take a look at that later about how you get the audio tracks, and it might be a question for New Harbinger if you're having a difficulty with that. And so what we're kind of working on here is this ability to kind of move between the between those states of the elevated heart rate and the slowing down of that, and the intervals between heart rate and all of those things. But basically what we're looking at is what we'll call nervous system flexibility. I'm not stuck in high activation, irritability, panic, restlessness, anxiety, and I'm not stuck in fatigue or shutdown or collapse. Not that there is something bad or wrong if you are stuck in those places, or that if your nervous system sometimes takes you to those places, because our nervous systems are doing the best job possible to protect us. Yeah, sometimes we're stuck in both at the same time, Michelle. And I think that what we're really aiming to do is kind of learn, and I use this phrase a lot, but learn how to sit in the driver's seat of our own nervous system. And that's the goal of these practices, is to basically help you slowly begin to notice the tendencies, notice the stuckness, and to be able to kind of realize that there's ways that you can breathe, or ways that you can work with your vagus nerve that can begin to change the state of your nervous system, even if for a while, because our nervous systems get conditioned by experience, right? They're like highly habitual, if we want to think of it that way. And if you've been living with one foot on the gas pedal and one foot on the brakes for many, many years, it takes time to reset and rewire and reorganize the nervous system. It's one of the reasons why the emphasis of this book is to help you develop new habits that support that rewiring, which basically means doing the practice once or twice is not enough. It's a daily practice that I'm going to encourage you to develop, and you'll get the tools to do that so that you start to feel this robust capacity to bring this in. And I think that I was teaching this in person at Omega Institute 2 weeks ago, and we had 5 days of doing vagal toning practices for 5 hours a day. Like, whoa, oh my gosh. And doing this in community with shared nervous system orientation to safety. It was so beautiful. And I just felt like I was watching miracles happen right in front of me. Like changes in hormonal regulation, reductions in chronic pain, reductions in fatigue, being able to ride bigger waves of emotion back into regulation. It was extraordinary. And I remember one of the students came up to me right after the retreat and said, "For the first time, I feel inspired to have a daily practice." How beautiful is that? And so like that is the purpose of this book, and the accompanying course is to inspire you to cultivate a daily practice that you look forward to doing because it feels good. So it doesn't feel quite so effortful. Chapter 4 accompanies Chapter 3. We've got vagal toning practices in Chapter 3 that work with self-applied touch, where the vagus nerve comes close to the surface of your face. Chapter 4 works with conscious breathing. That's often kind of considered to be the fastest way to regulate your nervous system is through the breath. And you'll learn a range of breathing practices, again, to put you in that driver's seat. Um, Chapter 5, the courage to change with bilateral movements. So I've been an EMDR practitioner for 20 some years. I trained in 2001. And we often refer to the vagus nerve as this mind-body superhighway of communication. In this chapter, I draw on those years of being trained as an EMDR therapist to really explore how do we enhance communications between the brain and the body and within the brain itself, across different areas of the brain, so that the thinking part of your brain and the verbal parts of your brain can connect to the parts of your brain that process emotions and sensations. And we're kind of building that communication network across all of those domains, helping us reflect a little bit more clearly on our emotions and sensations, while also sensing the cues that let us know that we're safe enough in the here and now. As a somatic therapist and a trauma therapist with EMDR, I've learned over the years that slow and steady really is an important part of this journey. Right? We don't necessarily need to or want to open up too much too fast, or we get what we might call the rubber band effect. We stretch and then we go back into contraction. And that's true at the level of the nervous system and our emotional processing or kind of psycho-spiritual sense of self. So it's a very kind of mindfully progressive book that takes you through step by step. I'll share one more quote from the book here, from page 120 if you have the book and are following along. Basically, it says that you are so much more than the difficulties, the wounds, or traumatic events of your life. You are whole and you are wise and worthy of care. In chapter 6, we go into more of the mindful movements to support your nervous system and explore embodiment and trauma recovery. I thought I would take this moment here to guide you into just a little bit of a somatic experience. And this one is an invitation to once again slow down. And this is very much with the intention of resource, just allowing yourself to orient for a moment to those cues of connection and safety here and now. So you might even, if you need a little bit more of a robust cue of safety, find something in the current moment. Maybe it's our shared community. Maybe it's my voice. Maybe it's the plants in my background or something in your space. Allowing that cue of safe enough or calm or even sometimes just neutral to be something that becomes a bit of an anchor for your nervous system. And the next invitation is to take one hand right to the base of your skull and the other to the front of your forehead. And your eyes get to be open or closed. You always have choice. And with your hands holding your very own head, it's a light enough touch. It's kind of a sweet holding of your head in the sense that you might imagine how you would hold the head of a young child and your beloved pet, a loved one, and offering that kind of caring hold to yourself. One hand right over your frontal lobes, part of your brain that's capable of reflection and really orienting to time and space. While your other hand is holding your brainstem, part of your brain that does a phenomenal job helping you navigate the world, both in relationship to stress or threat, and also in relationship to safety, letting you rest, digest, calm down. You can even imagine that you are kind of sending light between your two hands, breathing into the space between your hands. No, we don't have lungs in our head, but we have sinus cavities that receive the breath, sensing that movement of breath into your head space. And then gently, slowly releasing your hands. And just noticing how your nervous system responds to something simple, yet quite often potent. Yeah, felt sense of being held, says Jess. Beautiful, beautiful. One of the things that I love about doing this is that there's a quality of holding ourselves, but when we do this with others, whether it's in a one-on-one therapeutic relationship or in group spaces, we're also simultaneously being held while we're holding ourselves and receiving the words in the chat, softening, calming, yawning. Lovely. Yeah. Mm. And I can't see any dots. I think that's relationship to saving the chat. They're in there. Yeah. So the chapter 6 talks a lot about a phenomenon in polyvagal theory called the vagal break. And I won't go into the science of all of it now, but basically kind of how we sometimes need to remove the vagal break to mobilize in the world, even for the purpose of play or exercise or climbing a mountain. And sometimes we want to know how to put that vagal break back on smoothly, gently, so that we can slow things down. Our final chapter is Rest and Restore through Trauma-Informed Mindfulness and Relaxation Practices. Once again, you'll find audio tracks that accompany that you can access in the book that take you to the New Harbinger website to find those. And I'll kind of share one more quote from the book, and then I want to share a poem that's in the book, and we'll open it up for a little bit of interaction. Here and towards the end of the book, I write, keep in mind that when you feel buoyant and supported, you are better able to be a positive influence on others in your life and within your community. This hurting world needs people who are capable of offering kindness, compassion, warmth, and generosity. You are now equipped with the building blocks to not only shape your own life, but also become a source of benefit for others. My deepest wish is that this workbook provides you with the courage and strength to recognize yourself as a source of co-regulating goodness in the circle of life. How does that one feel? It feels good for me to read those words. All righty. So at the end of the book, and I'll share just a little history of this poem, and then I'm going to read you the poem. So at the end of the book, there's a poem in here that's called For Now We Are Free, a polyvagal poem. Who thought that you could write a poem about the polyvagal theory? But what happened for me was that I went to the Polyvagal Institute conference. Huge shout out for the conference, by the way. It is, in my mind, no joke, life-changing, deeply, deeply moving experience. Pauline, you and I met there. It was so lovely. I know. Susie, we met there, right? So many of us have connected in those spaces. And this was the first one that I attended. I don't even know if it was the first one ever, but this was in Atlantic Beach 3 years ago. And it was also a potent time because we were coming back in person for the first time post-pandemic, and there was kind of a lot going on in there. And I had this kind of tipping point. Yeah, Pauline says life-changing, right? And I had this tipping point moment at the conference. In fact, it happened at both of the PVI conferences that I attended to, where my heart was so full, it literally just started overflowing out my eyes. Like I was just weeping in the context of feeling so held. You know, we use that word held here. I felt so held in that space and so safe to just allow something to heal within me through the gateways of feeling held and safe. So that is my greatest wish. And as I got on the airplane coming home from Florida, I wrote this poem on the airplane. So here it is for you. For now we are free. There is a pattern hidden in the tapestries of our biology that carries within it a map to our freedom. Like blueprints, there is a pathway to be discovered in the cellular matrix and connective tissues of heart and lungs, belly and brain. Deep in the very fibers of these precious bodies we inhabit, we discover portals to personal and collective liberation. But this is not where our story begins. No, we must return to a time when we are confined by the binding forces of separation, loss, and heartache. Perhaps a time when you too have felt imprisoned by pain, constrained by your mind, or disoriented by the distress of this broken world. To a time when you two were locked in this room with no key, no way to escape, to a time when you two had no choice but to surrender. Head bowed close to earth, we are called to descend, descend into darkness cocooned within. You settle into the marrow that carries your existence pulsing through your veins. Nothing to do but to be. It is here that something new begins to appear. Slowly, your eyes adjust. You begin to sense space and time. Slowly, your ears fine-tune themselves to the subtle tones of songs sung in hushed tones passed through generations. And the patterns begin to reveal themselves. They arrive waiting to be discovered as if for the very first time. You find them in this stillness, like constellations of light that stand out against the vastness of a blackened sky, like a north star, a compass in the night. Perhaps you too have sensed how these moments resonate in the pit of your belly, in the catch of your throat, the ringing of your ears, the ache of your head, and the cry called out from the depths of your very own heart, as if for the first time you too are longing to be heard. Your very own voice, your clarion call has been heard by this benevolent universe that we share. Love has heard the call. Love has come to guide your way, and you stand uncertain at this new edge of life. Oh, but this love is so new, so unfamiliar, you turn away in fear once and again. But it is time to let go of what is known for what is yet to be revealed. And love, she is patient and persists in her quiet manner. You sense her as the light shifts across the windowsill, sending a play of shimmers and shadows across this place you have learned to call home. She returns as bird song and honeybee, in the distant ocean roar and the howl of the wolf under the now full moon. And suddenly, Without realizing it, you too have stepped across the threshold onto the soft green moss, where the ferns unfurl their ancient wisdom, inviting you to join them in their dance toward the sun. It is here that you discover the fibers of connection resonating in your hips as you lay your belly down on the moist earth to embody the primordial movements of salamander and snake. It is here that you learn to walk and crawl as if for the very first time, for these evolutionary blueprints guide you, as they have done for countless other brave souls over thousands of years. Indeed, they are here to guide a path to personal and collective liberation as we rise up like the tree, our roots firmly ensconced in the moist, dark earth. It is here that you look around as if for the very first time you too have discovered that you're not alone. You find soft smiles, bodies rocking, drums beating, dancing, storytellers spinning webs like maps woven into ritual and song. Yes, you have arrived. You are standing on this path, a trail traversed by countless wisdom seekers who have come before you. They have left you their guideposts and lanterns to illuminate your way out of the dark woods to the clearing where we arrive. We join each other hand in hand, heart to heart, eye to eye. For now we are free. Thank you. So, Mac, I'm going to have you help me. I'm not tracking the chat very much, except for a few little things popping up. But thank you, Sinead, beautiful and inspiring. Thank you. But for the most part, I'm not tracking any of this. So I'll have you kind of guide if there's some questions that are in the space. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Arielle, for sharing that poem. I know you'll be at our conference. Maybe we can put you on the spot for a live poetry reading at one point. I'm sure there wouldn't be a dry eye in the house. So thank you for that. And thank you for your presentation. We have just a little over 10 minutes here for Arielle to answer a few questions. I just want to start with a few that were at the top of the chat about translations of this book. I saw one for in French and in German. Could you speak a little bit more to any potential translations of your publication?
Yes, I think the biggest news is that New Harbinger is working on it, and so I know they are in process. How about that? I usually, ironically, and I never quite understand why, but Germany is usually the first, which is awesome, and they usually grab hold of my books pretty quickly, and then. We'll kind of see where it goes from there. Italy will probably come out in there. And for some reason, Spanish is like the last one that seems to grab hold of my polyvagal books, and I just don't understand that at all because I feel like it would be it's a pretty common language, but I know they're in process. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Arielle. And I know some of the another popular question was about accessing the resources for those who have not purchased the book via New Harbinger, either through Amazon or other outlets. Could you speak to a little bit about accessing those audio resources for those who purchased the book not with New Harbinger?
Yeah, so one thing that I will do, and I think I'm actually just going to screen share this really quick because it's probably the easiest way for me to get there, is let me share to the New Harbinger site. So here we're on the New Harbinger publication site, and whoops, and then it says download free tools. So they've made some tools free, but the audio, or I guess here they are. There's some audio ones that are in here, free tools for you that accompany the book. And I will put this right into our chat as well so that that becomes easy for you all to find. There you go. Great. Thank you for that question as well.
Thank you. And another one that came through was, could you tell us the difference between this new book that you spoke to today and the Complex PTSD Workbook?
Yeah, I would say there's quite a few differences. Maybe one of the biggest differences is like 9 years, in the sense that I wrote the Complex PTSD Workbook in 2016. I love that book. It is also a favorite of mine, and they're really quite different in the sense that I've grown, I've learned a lot in 9 years' time, especially about polyvagal theory. And maybe the biggest difference is that the polyvagal workbook really centralizes polyvagal theory within the whole book, whereas the complex PTSD has a very small section that discusses polyvagal theory, as I've been interested in this topic for that long, but really just kind of taking and centralizing the polyvagal theory. And I would say, like of the various books, and I have, as y'all know, quite a few of them out there. They're all similar and different because, in a sense, they're all still me. But if I would also say, I don't know if I have the Post Traumatic Growth Guidebook up here or not. I don't think so. I have some of my other ones, but the Post Traumatic Growth Guidebook is also similar and different. There's like a little bit on polyvagal theory, and then kind of taking this whole arc. But then I also have several books just focused on, not just, but also books focused on applying polyvagal theory within yoga. And this one's differentiated from that because it's not a yoga focused book. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schwartz. And another one from Terry Shuttleworth. Terry asked, "Hi, Dr. Schwartz. So lovely to attend your discussion. I was wondering if there were any exercises outside of this book that would support clients with ASD or neurodivergence. I have several clients who are young adults and are neurodivergent. They struggle so much with sensory overwhelm, and often they have comorbid developmental trauma. I would be
Yeah.
so interested to hear your thoughts on this."
Yeah. So in terms of other resources, I have a whole lot of them, especially on YouTube, that are free. So I have over 220 videos on YouTube that you can access for free. Some of them are very simple. But in terms of, most of my resources focus on trauma recovery. And yes, there is a strong kind of crossover, especially when there's developmental trauma because of neurodivergence and match and so forth. And just simply feeling bombarded sensorially by the world. So I would say that any of the resources that I have out there that are focused on sensory integration, which is a huge interest of mine, are great for the ASD population. And that certainly the course that I teach here with PVI as part of the flagship program is emphasizes sensory integration within that class, and most of my trainings have some version of that or another. So thank you.
Thank you. And just a couple more coming in here. A couple from Barbara Gilbert. Arielle, I'm a big fan of your work and I have found it enormously useful. However, in my experience, there is no substitute for live presence as the co-regulation is so much more immediate and deeper. And there's a follow-up from Barbara. Uh, the studying is valuable in terms of how we can utilize these skills in expansive ways, especially in our day-to-day interactions. So I think Barb was asking if you could just speak to just the live presence and co-regulation in terms of addressing trauma.
Yeah. One thing that has really blown my mind, Barbara, is the ways in which the translation of at least face to face happens in our online communities. And I don't know that before 2020, if I ever really would have imagined how much co-regulation could happen across the screen, but both in terms of one-on-one work and group work, it blows my mind again and again. And so I do think that at least kind of real time, even if we're not in the room together, but real time co-regulation is amazing, whether that's on Zoom settings, and of course being in real time in person settings is amazing. It's such a gift. And I think that to some degree, part of the goal that we're trying to achieve is to know that even when we cannot access the interpersonal sources of co-regulation, that we can internalize the nourishment and the benefit of that, so that when we click leave meeting, right? When we end our time together, that we still, in a sense, kind of have this now internal feeling of what it felt like to be a part of a group focused on these cues of safety and connection. Or when I leave a psychotherapy session, that I'm taking with that this ability to be softer and kinder to myself because of how my therapist gazed at me, and the soft smile and the welcoming and the warmth that we communicate. So it becomes part of how we hold ourselves. That said, the more that we've experienced complex developmental trauma or losses of relational sources of nourishment, or even relational betrayals, the more that has wired into our nervous systems, the more that we really need these safe places with others to be able to build that kind of missing foundation.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah,
Schwartz. And
thank you.
uh, just a few more minutes left. I think we can maybe get to one or two more questions, but
Great.
um, here's one asking, does your new book address support with, quote, numb but wired, end quote, dorsal sympathetic blends often missed in classic ventral activation models?
Yes, to some degree, I think that that's covered in there. I'm like thinking of how much I'm speaking about the freeze state, or what we might sometimes refer to as functional freeze, that gets missed because there's a high functioning capacity to basically move through the world. And then, kind of internally, there's either bracing, or there's kind of uh, kind of a core wound that's been compartmentalized away or not accessible, or as you named, numbness. And I'm going to say that the practices themselves are going to basically work with the whole range of what we'll call trauma responses, whether that's being stuck in sympathetic, or mixed blended hybrid states of freeze, or even the fawning appeasement type expression that can sometimes happen. So I think that's in there. I tried to make this book feel as accessible as possible. So I think sometimes you might find that if you go, for example, to my Norton book, the Applied Polyvagal Theory in Yoga, because this is more of an academic book, I speak a bit more to the science side of things, and so you'll kind of feel, not that in any way this is kind of dumbed down. It's actually still, kind of trusting that everyone has enough intelligence to really grasp these concepts, but it's kind of not going into kind of every detail, because I think that I would lose lose people along the way. Oh, Kiara, you wrote something really important just to say here. I, for the first time ever, got to read my own audiobook. And so if you like to listen to your books, you will hear my voice reading it to you, and that is also kind of downloadable across various places, including Amazon.
Awesome. Thank you, Arielle. And I think we just a couple minutes, if you could briefly share, someone asked about your thoughts about using progressive counting, PC, for trauma treatment and therapy work as either an alternative to EMDR or along with it.
I don't know enough about it, so that's kind of unfortunately my answer on that one. I think there's a lot of different modalities, certainly distancing approaches, and counting being one example of how we basically can kind of challenge working memory to have to do two things at once. I have to think about counting while I also am kind of running a little bit of that activation of the trauma, and I think it works on some of the similar principles. So, but I don't know enough about it to comment on that one. Thank you all. Really quick, I'm going to pull up our screen share one more time, because I just want to give you the option, if you want to pull down that QR code for that'll take you right to that New Harbinger website. It's an easy way to get it. And then also one more time, just to see that Welcome 25 being your 25% off. And thank you. It means a lot to me when you purchase the book, so that I deeply appreciate that. I will leave this up for another 10 seconds, and then I'll take it down. Really a true honor to be here. I want to thank our PVI community one more time for hosting me. I'm going to take this back down. And thank you, thank you. Just grateful. Um, And I don't know if you've got any more announcements before you close out, Mac, but I'm grateful to you all.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Schwartz, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We're going to be, Arielle is going to be returning to PVI for a free course info session in early August. Her new course is starting in September with PVI Vagus Nerve Stimulation, Natural Neural Exercises to Enhance Emotional and Physical Health. Are also excited to have Arielle on our Wired for Connection podcast. That episode will be out in mid-July, so look for that. Yeah. And Aria will also be speaking at our conference this fall, as mentioned. It's in Amelia Island, Florida, starts on Halloween, October 31st. Runs for a few days, and you can join either in person or virtually. And we'll be sharing a link to that webpage with more information about our gathering in the follow-up email with the recording, either later today or tomorrow. And yeah, finally, just welcome you all at our website, polyvagal.org, for more information on our courses, online communities, and more free events like this one. So thanks all for joining.
Thank you, everybody.